Call the Public Works Committee meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Cindy.
Here.
Seth.
Here.
Todd.
Here.
Andrew.
Here.
And Crystal.
First period for public comment. No one's here. Is anyone online who'd like to speak?
It doesn't look like it, Cindy. I think you're good.
Approval of committee minutes from May 6th, 2025.
This is Todd. I'll approve the committee minutes for May 6, 2025.
Yay.
And this is Crystal. I'll second.
Motion by Todd, second by Crystal to approve the minutes. Any corrections or additions? AJ, Seth?
Not here. See any.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Motion carries. Approval of Forecash Electric proposal for installation of lights at the water towers.
Okay. I'm realizing now that you read the agenda item, I had two proposals from him, but I will just do the water tower specific one because we can do the other one next time because it did say water tower, right? Okay. Let me just make sure I pick the right one here. Yeah, these are the ones that I want made. Thank you. Okay, so we had experienced a couple times now people showing up at the water tower and trying to get in. And one of the things that we did in order to deter folks, besides putting a camera up, was lighting it. So right now, if you drive by the Eckhart Park water tower, it's like sort of temporary floodlights like you'd see on like a construction site. So far, so good. They seem to be working well, and we haven't had any neighbors be concerned about it. So we are looking to move to something more permanent. So this is what Forecash Electric's proposal is. So this would be for both water towers. So the one on Faber Drive, the one at Eckhart Park, for $2,450 each. And what he's looking at is this. So essentially it's got a sensor on it. It will turn on for during nighttime and off during daylight hours, although you can disable it and just have a just on off. And then one of the things I liked about this was that it had like you can select the temperature of the light, which is often something that gets brought up. And it is intended to light like the ground and sort of out like to the fence area. We want sort of not just a cut off light intentionally, because we're trying to make sure it's lit well enough that people don't feel like they're disguised while they're up there. So this is what we're looking at. I think it's a good choice, an outdoor light. And as mentioned, it truly is a security measure. So
Did it say it had a 3-year warranty or?
yes, that was what it said. Yep.
And are they attached at the top shining down or at the bottom going up? Just
It'll be like up on the actual like pedestal.
ring.
Yeah.
Okay.
He talks about it being fastened with magnets. So
Yep.
it'll be like really powerful magnets, which is good because we don't want to penetrate the pedestal because it causes weakness in the tower structure.
Yeah.
There is a hole that is already there that was used for the camera for the park once upon a time. And so we can use that.
Mhm.
But we don't want to do anything else to the steel.
Thank you.
Any other discussion, questions? Okay, looking for a motion to approve or not?
This is Crystal, and I would move approval of Forecash Electric proposal for installation of lights at the base of the water towers. And I believe the total's 4,900.
Sorry. Yep.
Yep.
Todd will second it.
Motion by Crystal, second by Todd to approve the installation of the lights at the water towers. Any further discussion? Roll call.
Seth.
Aye.
Todd.
Aye.
Andrew.
Like he's gone. Is he on anymore? Maybe lost it.
Yeah,
though.
I think we lost, AJ's no longer on. I don't know when we lost him, to be honest with you.
Crystal
Aye.
and Cindy.
Aye. Okay, motion carries. Okay, the mayor has requested that we take number 5 and move it to the end of the meeting. So we'll go on to number 6. Review and approval of change order for Main and Decker contract, Chippewa Construction.
Okay, so this is considered a change order for the Decker intersection project, but it's not specifically that. And that's really confusing.
Think
Uh,
any different?
Yeah. So we are attaching the work to this contract because because it's flexible and it's complete within our control. But what this is it was the ground stabilization work for doing the bus garage patch. So we wanted to be putting it as a part of a contract, but we thought, you know what, if we put this on the other one, which is where we have put the concrete parts of it, then we're gonna have to put a change order in front of the DOT and to try to explain all that, and they don't want to do repairs. And it was just like, nope, this was a much tidier spot to put it. So that's what this is. So it was for 3,074.94 cents, and it was basically they remove the soils, blah, I can't talk. The soils underneath that area, put matting in, and then put everything back like they were supposed to, because we do not want to go back in there again. Because that was a second repair at that location. First time it was by the DOT, but it clearly wasn't enough. So
Okay, anybody have any questions? Looking for a motion to accept?
This is
Or no?
Crystal, and I would move approval of the change order for Main and Decker's contract with Chippewa Construction in the amount of $3,074.94.
Todd, I'll second it.
Motion by Crystal, second by Todd. Any questions? Comments? Okay, roll call.
Todd,
Aye.
Andrew, Crystal,
Aye.
Cindy,
Aye.
and Seth.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries.
Cindy, before you move on to the next one, Sarah, how is that cost gonna be pulled out? So right now you have it part of the Main and Decker contract. But it
just
was,
like we've done before.
but it
well,
was technically part of the,
it's a part of our own operation budget. It's for under like materials and
got
maintenance.
it,
Yeah.
okay, and I'm sorry if I missed that.
Your boots even match your sweater. I just noticed that. Oh.
I'm trying to make light of the weather today, but I ended up getting right in it anyway.
Black umbrella, you got that Morton
If
Salt,
only I had that, that would have helped this morning.
or white umbrella, whatever color umbrella is.
Lori, it looks like AJ's back in the meeting too.
Yes.
Kind of.
Yeah, AJ, we're struggling to hear you come through.
How about now? Clear? No?
Yeah, it's good.
Yep, much better.
Okay. Sorry about that. Phone decided to restart. So
Oh, no.
Always something. Approval of bid.
did you need my vote on the white?
I need your vote on the last two, the 2450 times 2 for the lights, and then also for the patch at the garage, the change order.
Yes for both.
Okay, thank you.
So you do need to get them. I'm just curious, since we lost him and we still have to go back and, because we already had a forum. Just curious.
Well, he was on, we just couldn't hear him, I believe. So I wanted to, if I do it all in favor, at least I know then that he was listening and he took and wanted to vote on it. So that's why I went back.
Right,
So-
so for the first one, I'm guessing he heard most of it for the water tower conversation. I don't think he was there for any of the conversation regarding the
Change order.
the change order. That's the only difference. It probably matters none the
It's
least.
not going to matter one
Okay.
iota as long as you guys all
No,
agree.
and
So
the reason
I'm
I'm
just going to
asking
leave it that way.
Is Cindy was just like Cindy, she was just curious what protocol is when something like
Yeah,
that
yeah.
happens.
Since we had a quorum, I just wondered. Okay. Let's see. Approval, approval of bids for Center Avenue reconstruction.
Okay. So we ended up having 4 bidders for the Center Avenue project. And oh, that was a little further than I wanted to go. And we had a range of bids. So it was one of those situations wherever, well, at least I was going, wow. So here is, oops, no, that's incorrect. Here is the base bid results, and I'll give you a different visual later, but this is just the bid tabs. So here, Gerke Excavating was the low apparent bidder based on the base bid, which was $2,747,498.02. Again, you can see where everybody else falls in, but if you can notice that Badger Environmental is not that far off for a $2 million plus $2.7 million project, 30,000 or less off is a tight spread. So that's always good because it means like we're really getting a good number and it's competitive. But then we had a couple of alternates. So alternate 1 was doing storm sewer. And it was storm sewer basically from Court Street to Jefferson. And it extended particular to get storm sewer at that Jefferson and Center Avenue intersection by the post office. They have some interesting storm sewer with water coming off of the building and going through the sidewalk. And so long story short, we could clean that area up, but also get storm sewer where there is no storm sewer. And so if you look at that, you'll notice that Badger came in at 70,785, whereas Gerke came in at 87,431. The second bid alternate, and the reason these were alternates, and I would say they're additive because there's no, if the alternate is to have it or not have it, is because we didn't originally have it in the estimate. When we originally had Veerbecker put the estimate together, they put storm sewer where there was storm sewer or something that was like really obvious at the time. But then when we were doing our field walkthrough, we realized that there really could be, it'd be useful to have these areas. So this second one is nondescript from its description, but essentially it would be adjacent to Nelson's. So like that block, like beside Nelson's on Center Avenue from, it actually would go up to Church to Parkinson and then just south of that so that we could capture some of the stuff that's happening there. So then again, if you look, the Gerke was at 44,019.10 and Badger was at 36,030. And then the last bid alternate was the decorative lights. We just put the whole decorative lights package in one. And so again, we have bid alternate totals at 78,763.65 and 77,6646.37. This was really close, was the gist of it.
This was the 4 lights that we talked about. Remember we were,
Yeah, and I think we actually ended up having 6. They ended up on with 6, because these are concrete base types 6. That's how they ended up with the design. Because we had KL Engineering come out and they did an assessment of the lighting scheme and where the current lights were overhead and how we may go about lighting. So, in long story short, what ended up happening was they gave you kind of like a snippet of different options, but there's actually more combinations than this. And essentially, the storm sewer work without the lighting, which we're going to put the lighting in no matter what I would suggest, basically made or switched it one way or another. And I have another sheet I'm going to show you. So I don't know, do you need to know who the rest of these bidders are, Lori, or are you good with the bid tab?
I just basically put that there was 4 bidders, and if you're not gonna
5.
go with, there was
as I put my hands
Oh,
up and put 4.
So it's, yeah, so it's 5.
5
okay.
bidders in total. Okay, so I'm gonna switch out of this one and go to hopefully a little bit cleaner spreadsheet. Hide this. Okay, so this is what we just saw. And so if you look at them individually, Gerke got the base bid, but every alternate Badger was the low bidder. And so now we obviously would need to decide what to do. So my desire obviously is to have all of them in, because that's why we had them in the bid, was because if they were a good price and we could afford it, we should do it. I would say the lighting was an alternate, but I don't think we ever really intended it to be an alternate, but it was just the versatility of how to put it in the bid, because they were authorized to do the work as the bids were going out. So they were kind of scrambling. So this is not going to add up here, because this number also includes the engineering and the contingency. And so if you add up all of the alternates and the base bid and use a 10% contingency, which is usually when we are at design stage of the project, we use 10%. You can see the bids are, all of it is just slightly over what we had as our budget originally. At this point, typically you can go down to 5% contingency once you get the bids, but we're debating about whether we want to go that low. I feel like we put the project together pretty quickly, so I like to have some wiggle room. Matt Mukow, who is our Beerbecker engineer, said, you know, we put a lot of stuff in here, some quantities of things that we anticipated may come later. And he actually felt like 5% was a good number. But that said, even if we add 8.5% contingency, we're still under what our estimate was. So this makes me feel confident that we have budget room to be able to accept all the alternates. Because that comes important, because the way that we fund it is impacted by the cost of each entity's item. So for example, and I won't get too much into it, but we only can have a loan from the DNR for water for the water costs. And they assume all of this, the water main and all of those associated costs, and 20% of the street cost. When we typically do work, we'll do all of the water costs and a third. You've heard that before, a third water, a third sewer, a third streets. So there's always a little bit of difference between what the funding agency looks at and how we do it. But if they say if they have approved us at a certain amount, they won't give us more than what we've spent and what's eligible. And that comes in particularly important when we're looking at the sewer costs, because if you remember, we ended up getting a grant, a principal forgiveness with our DNR loan, and it's always tied to 40% of the cost. So if our cost for sewer is lower than our original estimate, our grant is prorated by that amount, right? We're always at 40%. And so what ended up happening was, if you compared Badger to Gerke, Badger's water costs were $100,000 less. So we had like some serious savings on the water. Their street costs were a little bit higher, and their sewer was about the same. So I spent a lot of time talking to Nate today, and a lot of time working through all the various scenarios, because my spreadsheets are such that when I change one number, everything has to change. But in summary, I think this is what I am presenting to you, and I can play with the contingency amount. This was what I put in at 8.5% or 8.5% contingency. But what we're looking at is, here's our construction costs. And when I say construction costs, I mean like all in. So contingency and engineering, but this is what we're paying. And then we have 2 grants, essentially. One's that principal forgiveness that's specifically for sewer. And one is the MSID DOT money, which is specific to surface transportation costs. So what we have done is, we assumed that all the storm sewer cost, more or less, would be taken care of by the grant. And that's just how we do our accounting, because they always want a 50-50. So it's the 50-50 of the overall cost, but we'll assume storm sewer is a eligible cost there. And then what's remaining of the street costs, we split 3 ways. And then we assume a certain amount of the remaining amount of MSID. So the MSID was 932,000, not 472,000. But we split it basically a third, a third, a third. What I ended up doing with this projection is 30, 35, 35. So 30, or excuse me, nope, that's incorrect. That's how I did my numbers, not how it turned out. So more of the grant went to the street costs than it did for the water and sewer. It wasn't quite a 30, 30, 33, 33, 33 split. But what that turns out to is having, of the total cost, that would be street costs, considered street costs. So that includes the storm sewer, the lighting, and a third of the road cost. We would have about 472,000 applied as a grant, which would mean, and this 8.5%, the incurred cost is 480,554. And if I change the contingency, this number goes below 466,000, which was what we had in our original estimate. And so some of the things that Nate and I talked about today was, you know, if there was sort of available funds in the TID, there could be small amounts that end up going into the water or sewer. But at this point, we want to keep a nice, healthy contingency.
So the 6.5%, is that supposed to be 8.5? Or is that something?
Well, so this was if I put 6.65% contingency in, it hits that 444,000 that we had originally estimated would be the street cost. So again, if I change numbers at the contingency, I had 8.5% when I showed you the numbers over here, and I was trying to keep some consistency, but I also wanted to give you an idea of like where we met our, so if you look here, I had 8.85 to show you that it like went within budget here. But I wanted to also show that even at 6.5% contingency, because like as the contingency goes down, then the incurred cost goes down, right? So I wanted to show like 6.5% would be where we would be at that budgeted amount. And it may go higher or lower. Water would get, our total water costs. So that's all the water main plus a third of the street costs. And it would end up with a grant of roughly $230,000. So then it incurs that 1,226,000. And again, you have to remember, like we're talking, I don't want to get into too much specifics. It's of $82 because we're again assuming contingency, right? So we will end up having with the loan some type of unfunded amount in that 40,000 to 35,000 range for water, if it's going to assume all of its cost of a third of the street. But I would say that that would either then be the borrowing that we're doing or having it under reserves. That I think is an amount that would be very manageable with our water reserves.
So Sarah, it's just because I found it helpful when you went through it with me, that column J where it says incurred cost, that's specifically loan cost, right? Or no?
Right. This is the cost that that utility or general fund or whomever would pay.
Gotcha. Not necessarily. It would be a loan in one way or another. For the street department, it's going to be a general obligation loan. For the water and sewer department, it's going to be that. But I think it's important because that's when you say it's unfunded, it doesn't mean that we won't pay for it. It just means that it won't be covered by a loan because
Correct.
the water and sewer, and I think maybe you mentioned this, the water and sewer loans won't pay for that portion for
Right.
reasons. We won't get into it now, but they won't pay for it. So we have to pay
Mhm.
for it with a different.
Right.
Okay.
Correct. Thank
Awesome.
you. Yeah.
From a different pot.
From a
Yeah,
different pot.
again-
It should say maybe from a different pot instead of
Yeah.
unfunded, but I just wanted to
I know.
be clear. And maybe that's not clear. These words are really challenging because there's different, it's how you look at it. And then, so for sewer, similar sort of situation, it's about 1,183,000. And a grant amount is even more for that at closer to 600,000, but that's because roughly up to 369,000 is coming from the DNR and it can only be used for sewer. We have no choice. And in that case, we would have this loan amount. And again, we, would end up not being able to realize that all with the DNR loans. And we would end up having to fund it some other way through reserves, borrowing. I expect that it could be something that we fund through reserves. So, and all in all, I guess, you know, we have a $1.6 million project. We're getting about 1.3 million in grant funds. The rest is coming mostly from low interest loans from the DNR. There will be this amount that would come from TID 6. And then again, we would have to decide how we want to go about these additional amounts. I will say, you know, as the project goes on and we get rid of contingency, like some of those numbers will probably shrink. But I don't want to predict at this point about where that is going to land because we're not even starting construction yet. But I think all in all, things are looking good. I mean, we are going to end up being able to fund more than we had originally planned on and be able to take care of it with what we were hoping to in terms of general fund cost. So, yeah.
Good
So
job.
Sorry, go ahead.
Good job.
Yeah. Thank you. So all of this is because we got to go back to the idea of what bid we're picking because we need to decide, are we picking the alternates or not? And I guess that would be my recommendation is that we truly put them in because we wanted to be able to do all of them. And looking at how everything lays out, we should be able to fund all of it. So as we go on to council, there's a couple things that I'm going to be doing between now and then. One of them is we submitted Badger's bid tabs to the DNR to let them plug everything in and verify that what we make an assumption of is fundable isn't fundable. We did have a few questions earlier on. We already asked them about them and they agreed with them. So I'm not expecting surprises, but still a good process to go through. The other question, which isn't really going to sway whether we pick our alternates or not, but I'm looking for them to verify is whether we're forced to go down to 5% contingency or if we can keep a bigger slush fund essentially. And that is, I'm waiting to hear back on that. I've heard through the grapevine that they used to force 5%, but that they've had some pretty big swings in contracts lately and decided to allow up to 10, which is always great to have some extra wiggle room, but we only get the money which we spend. So yeah, but those would be the two categories, I guess, that when we come back to council with this, that we would confirm.
So we're looking at Badger is
We're
the one
looking
that
at-
gives us all the alternates.
All alternates, which
Yeah.
would put us in a
The low
Badger
bid.
as a low bid. By not much. I mean, look at that.
Yeah.
2,957 and 2,956. So close.
Okay. Anybody have any further questions, discussion? AJ, Seth, I know it's hard if you can't see what we're looking at, probably.
It all sounds like Sarah's done a lot of work to make things fit where we need them to fit. Glad to see that the bids are competitive, so we know they're on the right track.
I would agree. Anytime we can get those alternates in with, especially that stormwater, plus if it lowers that cost little bit elsewhere. That's it's a good thing to have. So great job, Sarah.
Thank you.
So we're all in agreement we should go for the alternates. Somebody might want to make a motion?
Okay, I'll give this a whirl. This is Crystal, and I would move approval of the bids for Center Avenue reconstruction to Badger with all of the alternatives. And I believe the amount is $2,956,400.38.
You got it.
Todd, I'll second it.
Okay, motion by Crystal, second by Todd to accept the, or to pass on to Council Badger with all the alternates. Roll call, please.
Andrew,
Here,
was that a yes?
sorry, yes, I.
Crystal,
Aye.
Cindy,
I'm so tempted to say here.
Yeah.
Aye.
Seth,
Aye.
and Todd.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. Very good, Sarah. That was a lot of figuring.
Good analysis.
Yeah,
My brain
my
hurt for a
goodness.
little bit, but needed to happen.
Okay, and then you get to talk about Center Avenue some more.
Oh, are we at the updates?
Center Avenue project update.
Okay, do you want to show the agenda, Nate, or
Sure. Are you done with the,
up until we get to
oh, sure,
potentially
sure.
later? Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, Center Avenue. Well, this is kind of, I've got standing updates with all of the projects. So obviously we went out for bids. The bids came in looking good. We had 5 bidders, which is great. We don't often have 5 bidders. Now that once next week's meeting's over, we're gonna meet our requirements for the DNR because they needed us to have signed bids by May 31st. So we'll work on that. They're okay with, Lori, don't panic, about getting everything signed and all that stuff together for us. If it doesn't happen right on that date, they just know that we've accepted the bid. And then we'll, assuming it's Badger, which is what the proposal is, we'll work with them to set a date for a public meeting. Because we wanted to wait so that we knew what their plan was, so that we didn't have a vague public information meeting. And then we'll have to go through, anything that's would be something of question. We're really not changing the road too much. There is that multi-use path on the west side of Center, but it doesn't change anybody's property line or like driveway area. That's really it. It's pretty straightforward. I think the biggest thing that I've heard from talking to people is more construction. And so if you remember, part of the project is supposed to happen in 2025 or could happen in 2025. And that's the section in front of Nelson's and the block of Jefferson in front of the post office. Nelson's has asked that it happen now, like fall, rather than in the spring, because the spring is the time where they have their sales fair and all their stuff's going on. And so that's part of the reason. And then Jefferson, Wade and I were walking down there the other day and I just can barely take the condition it's in. But it's like, you don't want to put a whole bunch of money into it and then tear it out in 2 months, right? So, I mean, we've known this for a long time. It's in bad shape. We did that slurry seal to stabilize what was in front of the post office, but the curb is literally crumbling. I mean, it's in terrible shape. So long story short, those would be our priorities. And if Badger was to get it, they've already indicated they would start this year. So that will be nice, although we are kind of in everybody's space. And then the remaining parts are supposed to be 2026. So yeah, the one that's bothering me a little bit is Terhune, because it wasn't able to be converted to the angled parking because it's too small. It will be.
Narrow?
Yeah, it will be once the construction project's done. And so it's basically like in a waiting pattern. And so that's another one I'd like to look at. It wasn't in the bid like that because of how the road would connect with Center Avenue. Like we're changing some grades a little bit, but that we might still be able to get that done. So stay tuned. We'll know more once we talk to the contractor. They know they got it and we set a plan.
Okay, Main Street project update.
Well, we're basically done. There's a few things that, small punch list items But for the most part, we're where we're supposed to be.
Are the bump outs going to be painted yellow?
Yes. So where the contract ends and we begin is sort of what you would see is not being finished right now. So we have been working on removing signs that don't make sense. Because like some areas now it's like no parking and it's clearly parking, or it says parking for 2 hours and there's no parking. Our first priority after that, and it's really reliant on just getting dry weather so we can paint, is painting the locations that were parking before that aren't parking anymore with yellow on the bump outs or on the curb, painting the bump outs, and trying to get those things to make sense. And then we'll paint white on the curbs where you can park now, because there's going to be more parking than, like, for example, like Buzzy's area there's more parking than is currently indicated. So that happens, and then we're going to start filling out some of the parking and repainting like the white parking stalls on Main Street. And again, signage that is matching what's there. And there's missing handicap parking stalls. So some of them were removed or moved. And so we need to go in there. So if you go down Jefferson, you'll see like dotted lines, but no paint. It's because they're supposed to be handicap parking stalls. Although there is going to be a switch. We're going to have one where when you open the door, the driver would be able to get out. So that was one of the things I went through with somebody who was in a wheelchair, and they kind of drove me around last year and said, like, this is hard for me, because you don't always go through that experience. And so that was one of the biggest comments that he had, is like, when I get out, like I'm often trapped against another car or a curb that's funny. So there's some changes there. And there will be a no parking loading zone in front of where Rockweiler's is. So there'll now be a legitimate spot, but it's not Rockweiler's spot, right? Because we don't designate for business, but it's going to be a loading zone. So meaning whoever's using it can't be there long. It's, they're moving through. And there is also some painting that we need to take care of on Terhune, adjacent to Wonder State. We need to paint the curb because we couldn't get a curb head in because of the grades. People like drive up on the sidewalk. So there'll be both painting and signs put up that say loading zone, which will help prevent people from driving over the sidewalk.
Okay,
There's a few other like random things like that, but yeah.
okay.
I just wondered if we're going to have a color-coded map for reference on the website. Because I think people are anticipating changes, but don't want to go out there and practice until they know.
Sure, like color coded for like a direction or.
Well, especially for direction and
Mhm.
parking.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, we can certainly work on map. I think there's, now that we're getting here, I think now we start the education piece. Of about a bunch of things. I had someone the other day tell me those people aren't using that two-way left-hand turn properly. And I'm thinking, are they, or are they actually using it properly and you feel like it's not being used properly? So like, I think just in general, but yeah, any
can be
comments?
trained.
That's right, that's right.
Appreciated.
Okay, should we go back to number 5 so we make sure we have time for that? Now that we have the mayor here. Approval of proposal from TRC for landfill gas mitigation plan.
Okay. Here. So what TRC has put forward is a change order to their last contract. So instead of just getting a new contract, adding to it. So essentially what happened is they did their monitoring wells, which we've got here. So they put 7 monitoring wells in. This line is essentially the property line. I can't draw it straight, but where you can see the landscape changing is roughly where the property line is. of between our property and the landfill property. And then that strip of where the monitoring wells is actually on the sewer property. So it's not part of the Hanson Farms directly, it's adjacent to it. We acquired, I believe it was 60 feet of property. So we put them on that area because what we wanted to do was not know whether the landfill had gas, because it should have gas, but see what was moving, if anything, offsite. And then this one as well, you know, we were looking at the church property before, and we put 3 monitoring wells here. And the idea was that if there was gas migrating from the landfill, it should be stronger, closer to the landfill, and then like work its way to be less gas, because there was concern that there may have been a previous use of that property that was a sawmill that would actually be a source of gas. And so this initial investigation, so they have done monitoring of this area. I believe it's 4 different times, and then only a single time out here. And it was evident that there was gas, and it was higher in these 2, and then lower in this one. There were varying numbers each time they went out, but it was above what is supposed to be allowable off-site migration, right? So they take 25% of the lower explosive limit, which is like the LEL, because it's methane. Methane's biggest concern is just that, right? Being combustible. And so this is above that number here. And then all 3 of these were pretty close to that number. They ranged from like 1 to 5, and 5 is that like lower limit. You're supposed to be at 25% of it. So more like 1.25. But this one was higher than that. It depended, it was like 40, I believe, percent. And so when they take the monitoring, create the wells, they do like soil sampling, and they found like a sand seam kind of in this area. And so they're thinking that's probably why it was higher here than it was over here. So all of this, we've been in communication with the DNR from day one, right? We had when MG&E had originally let us know that they had detected some gas in the building when they were doing their annual leak inspection. We contacted them, and we've been working with them all along. So the first thing they wanted us to do was like find out more of what was happening. And then we've been reporting all that to them. And then they've said, well, you need to take the next step, because your limits, you should not be having your gas levels at that point offsite. And so they're looking for us to do some type of remediation. And they have been very happy with how fast we've been moving with this. They have usually like milestones that they want us to meet if we, like any site that you do get over 25% of the LEL. And so they are expecting for us to come back with what's called a work plan by June 7th. So we're pretty much know what we're already going to have in that work plan. And so that's part of the reason why we're bringing this forward. But then we also need to take that action by July 7th or 6th, I believe it is. And also we have a good plan for how we're moving forward with that. So that's what this proposal is for. And I'll work through some of this also, but just so that we can go through the proposal first. So when they were out, they had done their work on a time and materials basis was what their estimate was. And they ended up getting rained out and having a second mobilization. I did talk to them about whether or not that was something they could add to this, but they said that if they had like a not to exceed limit, they would have put in some contingency for things like that, but they were trying to keep this as bare bones as they could. And so they have added that into here. Then preparing an evaluation of options. So how would we deal with this giving us some options to contemplate. I would say that we have a pretty good idea of which way we would like to go so that we can keep moving things forward quickly, because obviously our timelines are tight. But they're still going to walk through like what other things could we do? And then what the plan is, so they would have, so our main contact is Mike Amherst. He has been doing an excellent job. I will say he's currently on vacation fishing, but I talked to him today. And he has agreed that they will do their best to get something to us for Tuesday's council meeting. So that we could move forward, because one of the things that we do not necessarily need to go through the full regular bidding process because of our timelines being so short. And so we're kind of like working in tandem with a local contractor that has the qualifications. We have to have specific WIM ORS hazardous site classification kind of thing to make sure they can deal with the gas situation and know what they're doing and working on site. And so they're kind of working in tandem. Mike's going to come, and I think that next council meeting would be a great one to be at. But he said, as long as you have flexibility, if I don't end up getting it all done, I can come to the next one. And, I said, do what you can. So that's in that one there. And then when they come out, they would test the probes again. So it is something that does fluctuate with ground conditions, seasonality, that kind of thing, because we are dealing with microorganisms very similar to the wastewater plant where microorganisms are, they do their thing, and under the right conditions will be more active or less active. And then preparing the work plan, like we said, that is something the DNR is going to ask or is asking us to do. And so describing what situation is and the proposed plan, and then they would have drawings for what they would like to have done out there. And then we would look at it, and the DNR would look at it, and once everybody's in agreement, we would move forward. And I will say that the DNR has been really good about just saying, like, check in with me. If we're good with it, you just keep moving forward, not our standard construction permitting process like we have for our water system, where we're hoping to get an answer in 60 days and then we can move forward. So they're involved in the process as we're going. This last task, when I talked to Mike today, he said, well, this task was about 34. Oops, I'm not. I think I just did reversal here. 43. Nope, 34 was right. 3,400 was to do this kind of bidding work, and we are not going to be doing a formal bid. We just don't have time for doing that. So we'll get bids, but we won't do a letting where we have bids to review and things like that. We will end up
Do you have questions on that?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
Do you?
No, I was just, I felt like there was
I'm just trying to follow along.
yeah, follow that. So what you're saying is that we will get multiple bids, but there won't be the traditional competitive bidding process.
We could get multiple bids. I mean, right now we're trying to work quickly.
Sure.
And there's not very many contractors that are in this area that have that qualification. And so we have a contractor who's working next to the project right now, and it just makes sense that if their bids come in reasonable, their mobilization is pretty much zero and they can be there right away. We certainly could look for more, but I would anticipate them not being competitive.
Sorry, no, I misunderstood, and I'm not suggesting that we would need to do that. So I think you're good.
Okay. So that part, I guess we can look at the total bottom line, but I will say also that I said, well, won't we need to do additional monitoring after it gets done so that we know that it is working? Because that's sort of where we're at, right? We're going to take a step, and I can go through what that is now. So he's going to certainly go through the process of making that analysis, but Mike does this every day. And he's looked at the situation, and he's like, we're going to end up with wanting to open up the landfill and basically like make a trench so if you go out there now, there's like what they call candy canes. It's like a gooseneck with a white pipe. That's supposed to be the passive venting system. And we're not getting a lot of gas on this side. So there's two sides of the landfill. This is the east side. The west side is working like it's supposed to. We see gas that comes out of those vents, but we're not seeing it on the east side. And so essentially what they would be doing is, assuming this is selected, is making like a trench to intercept that and actually have it off gas like it should be. And so essentially he's like, I don't know, he's trying to work as he's fishing, but next week we will know exactly like the distance, but it's probably going to be like a trench that's dug past the confining layer. So, the landfill, is it a big heap? And I should say, I say landfill, but the DNR calls this a dump. Like it wasn't, nowadays a landfill means something different, right? You have a liner and there's like all these cells and you're covering and baling and doing whatever. This was never that formal, right? This was like the town dump. And so anyway, so, putting it through, so when they closed this landfill, they took to the dump and they put basically a clay liner over top of it, and that sealed it. And so that's what's keeping the gas in, is that it's a sealed layer, right? And so he's feeling like, since we're not getting the gas migrating to the passive vents like they're supposed to, let's make it happen, essentially. Make a trench. He didn't know exactly how deep yet. He said he needed to go through and look at the plan and like which layers he might need to get to. But we're probably talking 8 to 10 feet along the north side and the east side, and then filling it with a gravel with these like pipes that are connected that can then become the vent, which is, if you look at the landfill plan, when they close it, they essentially put that in a version. And then cover it up and then give it some time and let it do its thing. And the idea is that it will preferentially go that way, right? Because gas is going to look, it's like water, you have a leak or whatnot, you want it to go to the path of least resistance. And the idea is that will reduce what's happening by it trying to migrate offsite.
So you need us to approve this.
So this
Or to
is,
send it to
there'll
council.
be some slight modifications, but Mike would like to be able to, since they're doing great efforts to keep this moving as fast as possible, he doesn't want to be doing a whole bunch of work and not have any contract that extends beyond what they've already done. So yes, looking to approve this contract.
we-
And Cindy, to answer your question, we would be looking to approve this now, not sending it on
Oh,
to
not-
contract,
yes.
because we're in a situation where time is of the essence, and so we're essentially
okay.
working off of the emergency protocols that we have built within our, right, like we are under some very strict guidelines here to get this done, and as Sarah said, this is a step we need to accomplish here tonight, so that the next step, which is to have a work plan, is available next week.
Okay, very good.
So does that mean you're just going to do like an update at council or not taking it to council at all?
Well, so council will actually be looking at the work plan and looking at the proposal from the contractor and sort of doing all of it.
Okay.
We're just approving the making the plan now.
But
right?
this is the making, you can, yes, TRC, go ahead and start moving on that work.
So
Okay.
the answer is yes, all of it, Lori, all of it.
I just
Okay.
wonder why you don't dig the whole thing up and just move it. That's what I
Money.
wonder.
Money.
Not my backyard.
You can do that. See, this is the lovely world of engineering. You can do whatever you want, but what's most economical,
When did it close?
No.
When,
early 90s.
early
It
90s?
might, I think the as-built say 1993.
Okay, looking for,
Were you around hauling clay? Yeah.
Yeah, I don't wanna, I wouldn't wanna dig up that part. No, I leave it be.
okay. Anybody want to make a motion to approve the proposal for TRC, from TRC?
This is Crystal, and I would move approval of the proposal from TRC for the landfill gas mitigation plan. Do we need a dollar amount?
Do you have one here?
I know the amount
54,
was
340.
Huh?
54,340.
Yep, 54,340.
And that's the amendment. So you've
wait,
already
28,600
authorized.
already?
Yes. This has
Yeah.
already been
Change
spent.
order.
Yeah.
So
It's,
25,740.
yes, is the increase.
Yeah.
Okay,
Sorry, Crystal.
thank you.
I don't second that.
Yeah. Okay, looking for a roll call, please.
Crystal,
Aye.
Cindy,
Aye.
Seth,
Aye.
Todd,
Aye.
and Andrew.
Aye.
Motion carries. Excellent. Another big project you had to look through. Okay, sewer project update. We've got 5 minutes. Sewer street
I actually
utility
have more, but I will do it in 5 minutes.
for all three.
I don't think the next meeting's till
Oh, we do?
6:30.
Oh, well, never
They
mind.
decided that I
We
just
learned our
can't
lesson.
meet the deadlines anyway.
Disregard.
I sometimes I self-impose them so we don't take so long, but this one they just didn't even ask. Okay, so let's see, what were we on? Sewer projects. Sewer projects, moving right along, actually. I'm failing to update. It's my to-do list for tomorrow. So the lift station is now out. No more lift station at the fairgrounds. And the last part of what they have to do in terms of like putting pipe in and stuff like that is where that hole is in the concrete in the road. They're going north up to Kroll Ready Mix's driveway with new sewer. And then everything is in place. So then it's just restoration. I believe he said that next Monday, they're going to put the concrete in for the road. So they can open that back up. So they're working underneath Monday it won't be open because they would pour it on Monday, but then they have to cure it. So it'd probably be another week after that before it's open. And the currently the work that's going north is underneath the sidewalk there. And so they'll be replacing the sidewalk for the Wild West Days, which has been planned for a long time. We've had hazardous sidewalks identified all the way up there, but we thought, why put it in when we're going to take it out right away? And everything is pretty much where we expect it. We did have that one, like where we were running into the Darylyn power pole where the waterway went and we put the shoring in. So that's a change order that's coming. And so we have about, oh boy, top of my head, 55,000 for contingency. And that one's like at 30. So we're where we expect to be. We had less paving than we expected, so there also should be a reduction in cost. And we still did a lot of Marquette. I don't know if anyone saw that. It looks great. I mean, it has to get shouldered, but we were looking at cutting like little bits, keeping some of it, and I'm like, there's just no point. There's no way I'm going to get back in here again. We do it right the first time we had some money there with, like I said, there was more asphalt that we saved other places. And so the only other thing that would be sort of additional is when we took out the fairgrounds fence, there was parts that had been damaged by salt. The top bar wasn't very good, and we're just going to put it back in good condition because I don't want to try to hobble it together more than it already is. I'll say the fairgrounds has been awesome. They have been so cooperative with us on the whole project. And we're all over the place. So I think that's only fair. And lots of restoration. They got a lot of work on restoration that they need to do still, but we're pretty much coming to the end. So yeah, finish construction season early, construction season to start late construction season in August, but we'll have a little break. But yeah, I think that's all for the sewer project.
Okay, street department update.
Okay, I was really bad today because I was very in depth in my other work I was doing, so I didn't get to Wade in time to get an update from him, but I can give gist of what's going on there. So, they're doing brush and compost. I know there was a notice out that said that there was something wrong with the brush and compost truck, but that was actually an error. So I think what happened was they had the sweeper broke down and then it got translated into the brush and compost truck not working. Yeah, right. It's close. So in any case, they'll be doing that the end of the week. We've had a ton of brush and compost. We are getting ready to paint. So we're, like I mentioned, all that work that needs to happen. They'll start painting all those things, and more throughout the city. We need to think about, like we had, in previous years, always had Farner or Century Fence come in and do the mainline painting. Because we used epoxy last year's project, a lot of it doesn't need to be painted this year again. And I'm actually starting to wonder if we should be epoxying everything on Main Street. But there were things that weren't included, and it's kind of like hit or miss. There's like parts up by Walmart. There's some of the things that were like the crosswalk at Decker, like they redid this 2 sides, but not the other side because it didn't change. But so I'm gonna go through, and you'll probably see a proposal from some quotes that we can decide to just pretty up the rest. And also going through that, Wade and I went through a bunch of signs that just were faded and didn't have the retro reflectivity anymore. So I'm hoping soon it'll look better. But Wade had a big long list of things that he needed to work on Main Street. I know they've been grinding stumps, and obviously they always do the catch basins when it's raining. And they put it in the order for the new set of trees. So to put it in the bed. And Wade and I went down and looked at the waterways that were downstream of the fire station, the new fire station. And so we need to do some work there. And we'll have to work with the fairgrounds because there were some things there that were not draining like we wanted them to. So yeah, I think that's about it for streets.
Okay, utility update.
Okay, so I know it's your favorite time of year when we do our CMARs and our CCR reports. So that's our water report and our sewer report. I know there was some conversation about really paraphrasing it for council. I will do some of it, but it is actually purposely intended for everybody to hear what's going on and know what's going on, because you're legally responsible for the operation of, especially the CMAR. So we have been talking about with Cheryl a schedule for putting that on in June. Let's see, we did our flushings over, we got our towers cleaned. It needed cleaning, but it wasn't terrible. You know, that's always good because we've been playing with the frequency of doing it, or we do it more than legislated to do because we want to clean it out, because when we drain it, we can clean it. And so we've been trying to figure out, is it every 2 years, or every 3 years, every 4 years, but it looked pretty good, and it had been 4 years. And so the system should be nice and sparkly right now because we flushed everything and cleaned out the tower. We've been having some challenges with one of the primary clarifiers at the wastewater plant. It keeps breaking its shear pin. And so there's like a skimmer arm that goes along the top and the bottom. And so Greg ended up having a company like offer this free assessment thing. So I think we're going to go through it and see what they come up with. So let's see. Sorry, I want to make sure I get Greg's list too. They've been doing sewer cleaning or sewer jetting, always lots of locates. They've dug up a couple of water shutoffs that haven't been working. And Railroad Avenue, you'll notice there's one patch that never got filled with cold mix. So on Railroad Avenue, we came in and put cold mix in the patches, and then we're going to seal coat the whole thing like we did last time. But there's one that's in front of the old well too. And that's because we're going to reconfigure the water main there. And we had originally got that as a part of the bid for the sewer project and decided that we could do it for half the cost. And it's also a good learning project because it's not huge. And we've got, 2 guys that are learning brand new on terms of doing that kind of work, like more than just a water service. So that is coming up the first week of June. So 2 weeks. And I think that's it.
Anybody have any questions? You made it, 6:04. Ooh,
Not too bad.
no. Okay. Second period for public comment. Hey, you back there, you have a comment? No.
Anybody online would like to make a public comment?
Okay. Adjournment.
Gotta make a motion to adjourn.
This is Crystal, I'll second.
Motion by Todd, second by Crystal, to adjourn. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, we are adjourned. Thank you so much, Sarah, for all you do and for everybody else.